Chapter 1452. Wind had followed the direction which Chi had provided and went to search for that place. The various powerhouses' men were unable to come out from the blazing flame nest alive. Then Wind This thought made Yiqing Luo inexplicably flustered. Wind was Xian's man. He was placed by Xian's side to protect her. If something happened to Wind, how was she going to answer to Zhou Xian? What's the matter? Long Yunzhan had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo's expression, and on seeing her suddenly stopping, he immediately asked. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth but immediately pursed her pink lips. The existence of the Dark Guard was extremely secretive. Even if it was her own brother. One of the Imperial Palace's 4 great guardians' Dark Guard was by her side. She couldn't let them know. Yiqing Luo took a look at the time and clenched her fists tightly as she shook her head. Bring the students to walk around nearby first. I'll rush back before the training starts. Saying that, Yiqing Luo didn't wait for Long Yunzhan's reply as she turned around and directly flashed, disappearing into the direction of the dense forest. Qing Luo. Long Yunzhan only had time to shout out and saw Yiqing Luo's figure, disappearing in front of his eyes. What's the matter? Yan Xiaoyi frowned as she looked at the direction where Yiqing Luo disappeared. Where is Qing Luo going? Long Yunzhan shook his head. Her complexion isn't very good, I'm a little worried. Kitty, go chase after sister. Long Yunzhan's words had yet to end when he saw a greenish-white figure flashed past his eyes. That sweet voice made the few of them stunned. Kitty. Long Yunzhan frowned as he cried out sharply, come back. However, the only response to Long Yunzhan was that flickering grass and trees. The atmosphere of the Devil class's students instantly became rather solemn. For some time, no one dared to open their mouths to break the silent atmosphere. All the students could tell that the current Long Yunzhan was extremely angry. Class monitor. Yan Xiaoyi looked at the Devil class's students who stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move as she took a deep breath. Qing Luo will be fine. Kitty's nose is very sensitive and only she can chase up to Qing Luo, don't worry. Long Yunzhan's pupils contracted. He stared unblinkingly at the direction where Yiqing Luo had left, as his azure blue eyes as though it was sparkling. After a long time he withdrew his gaze. His entire body tensed up like a block of iron. He bellowed, let's go back. With that he turned around and strode in the direction of the wooden shed. Tong Ziqing immediately jogged up to her as she cautiously shouted, class monitor, don't worry, Qing Luo knows her limits. If after the break time, Qing Luo still hasn't returned, we can seek help from Master Gui Wu. Long Yunzhan ignored Tong Ziqing's words. With a gloomy face he walked very quickly. It was as if he didn't care about the girl behind him who was trying to catch up to him. Looking at that cold and hard side profile, Tong Ziqing felt a sour feeling in her heart. She knew that right now Long Yunzhan's thoughts were all on Yiqing Luo. Long Yunzhan would not stop. He wouldn't even look at her, because she wasn't Yiqing Luo. But, as long as she could stay by Long Yunzhan's side, even if he ignored her, she would gladly endure it. Shrubs, grass, lush trees. This kind of terrain to Yiqing Luo was the best terrain. One must know that in the 21st century she was once thrown into the wild forest by that bunch of old men from the Yi family, and left to roam for 3 days and 3 nights. Over there it wasn't like now. To be able to have Qi, a sacred beast to boost her might. To have profound Qi to wave a hand to repel a wave of wild beasts. Chapter 1453. At that time she was bare-handed. On her entire body there were only 3 pieces of chocolate. Just like that she entered the wild forest. She wanted to survive. She wanted to survive in the mouths of those vicious wild beasts. She had to make use of her own skills and the surrounding terrain. To create more chances of survival. This kind of grass in the blazing flame nest had no effect on Yiqing Luo at all. Following the aura of the barrier, her figure was agile as she speedily shuttled through those grass and trees. In just a short moment she had already rushed to the boundary of the Elder's barrier. As long as she passed through this barrier she would enter the inner part of the blazing flame nest. But how to pass through the barrier? And not attract the attention of the Elder? The barrier around this place was jointly established by the 6 elders of the main institute. As long as a student or anything else came into contact with the barrier, the 6 elders would immediately sense it. Forcefully breaking through the barrier. Let's not talk about whether she could succeed or not. If she really used force, the elders would definitely sense it and rush over to stop her. By then she would really not be able to explain herself. Master, master. Chi-Chi's crisp voice was heard on her shoulder. Chi-Chi felt it again. That summoning feeling is right in front and it's very strong. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. Indeed, her guess was right. That summoning force was emitted from the inner part of the blazing flame nest. Most likely, this force was the southern continent's imperial tutor's prophecy of the descent of the divine object. This thought made Yiqing Luo increasingly worried about Wind's safety. So many powerful high-leveled cultivators. Under this force no one could survive. No matter how powerful Wind was. He was still a 17 to 18-year-old youngster. With this thought in mind, Yiqing Luo's heart was getting more and more anxious. Sister. Suddenly, a soft petite body covered her from behind. Two soft arms circled around her waist. Yiqing Luo's body tensed up and immediately felt a familiar feeling as she calmed down. But her expression was solemn as she pried open the hands on her waist. Kitty, why are you following me? The person behind her was Kitty Li. She wasn't surprised that Kitty Li would follow her. Kitty Li's sense of smell was very sensitive. Furthermore, she had the nature of a cat, so she could easily move through the forest. But Yiqing Luo had not expected Kitty Li to choose to follow her. Kitty Li blinked her spirited cat eyes. Because she was shuttling through the forest, the headscarf covering her ears had long been lost somewhere. That pair of black ears were exposed right in front of Yiqing Luo's eyes. Sister, Kitty can feel that you're worried about something. Kitty can also feel your uneasiness and panic. Kitty Li wiggled her ears. Kitty is very worried about Big Sis. I can't let Big Sis be alone. Cats had the most intuitive sense of human emotional changes. It was because she sensed the helplessness and panic in Yiqing Luo's heart. That was why Kitty Li didn't say a single word and chased up to Yiqing Luo's footsteps. His sister had always been confident and strong. Will have such emotions. No matter what, Kitty Li could not allow her sister to wander around this dangerous place alone. Feeling Kitty Li's undisguised concern, Yiqing Luo's heart softened a little as she rubbed Kitty Li's head lovingly. I've made Kitty Li worried, don't worry, I'm fine. Chapter 1454. The sincerity in her eyes made Yiqing Luo laugh out involuntarily. She rubbed Kitty Li's hand and softened her strength. Her palm brushed past that furry ear and she couldn't help but pinched it. Since we've already followed you here, I'm worried to let you go back alone. Kitty Li's little ears twitched as though Yiqing Luo's pinching had tickled her. A pair of lively cat-like eyes sparkled with a radiant luster. This obedient look made Yiqing Luo burst out laughing. But you must promise me no matter what happens, you must stay by my side and you're not allowed to act alone. All right. Kitty Li stood upright as she replied loudly. Sure. Yiqing Luo immediately raised her finger and made a shushing gesture. Don't let those elders find out, don't alert them. Kitty Li's eyes widened as she covered her mouth with both hands. Yiqing Luo rubbed her head and immediately continued to search for a way to pass through the barrier. Sister, Kitty Li can bring you over. Kitty Li carefully leaned towards Yiqing Luo and said softly. You know how to break the barrier? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. A beast from the cat clan could break the barrier? Kitty Li shook her head. Kitty Li doesn't know how to break the barrier, but Kitty Li can help you conceal your presence. Even if those old fogies found out, they would only treat it as an ordinary magical beast that accidentally touched the barrier. The flame nest had rather high-leveled magical beasts or mirage beasts. Those magical beasts or mirage beasts that could survive here all had fire-attributed abilities. Therefore Kitty Li's idea could be tried. Seeing that she could help Yiqing Luo, Kitty Li excitedly stretched out her hand. That fair little hand in a blink of an eye, turned into a furry cat's paw. At the same time Kitty Li's clear pupils were gradually dyed with a devilish red glow. The red glow gradually spread and filled her eyeballs. Yiqing Luo was very close. She could clearly feel a beast clan's presence emitting from Kitty Li. The cat's sharp claws forcefully left a crack on the transparent barrier. Yiqing Luo had yet to react. A furry tail wrapped around Yiqing Luo's slender waist. His body felt light and his feet were suspended in the air. In the blink of an eye he had plunged into a forest. Far away in the wooden shed, the 6 elders who were resting with their eyes closed suddenly opened their eyes. Who touched the barrier? An elder berated harshly. Gui Wu and Zhou Xian looked at each other and subconsciously looked in the direction of the devil class. The students of the devil class had yet to return. Could it be that they had touched the barrier? Gui Wu's eyebrows were tightly knitted together as he walked in front of an elder. With a flip of his palm, it landed on the head of an elder. The elder was startled. He immediately wanted to retreat. However, he was imprisoned by the ghost martial artist's strength and was unable to move. Suddenly, a ray of white light was emitted from the elder's body. An image appeared in midair. In the image, a lush forest was constantly swaying. Above the forest, a long black tail appeared. So it was a blind magical beast that touched the barrier. The head institute elder heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily we have Master Gui Wu, otherwise we would have made a wasted trip over to check on the situation. A false alarm, a false alarm. Let's continue to guard the barrier. The few elders started to flatter him one after another, while Gui Wu kept silent as he stared at the image at that swaying tail. Chapter 1455. Yiqing Luo, who had plunged into the vegetation, was still held down tightly by Kitty Li. It was until half an incense's time had passed when Kitty Li grabbed Yiqing Luo and speedily left the vicinity of the enchantment. Outside the boundary was the interior of the flame nest. Yiqing Luo could obviously feel that the surrounding heat was continuing to rise. Even now she was wearing the ice pearl. That scorching heat made Yiqing Luo unable to adapt to it. The interior of the fire lair was indeed different from the periphery. Yiqing Luo wiped the perspiration off her forehead and looked sideways at Chi-Chi, whose fur was also damp from the heat. Which direction did you tell Ah Feng to go? Chi-Chi opened her mouth and panted as she replied, Chi-Chi only gave me a rough location. In other words, it was a place near the flame lair. Chi-Chi did not know where Ah Feng was in the blazing lair. Kitty Li blinked her eyes and used her little head to rub against Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Sister, Kitty Li can help you find him. Yiqing Luo looked at Kitty Li. You've never seen him before, can you tell what he smells like? Although Kitty doesn't know the smell of the person Big Sister is looking for, Kitty can smell if there are other people around. Kitty Li sniffed fiercely, her little nose twitching, a proud look on her face. Yiqing Luo pinched her little nose. My cat is the best. The smile on Kitty Li's face blossomed like a flower. This place has a very strong smell of blood, but there are no other human scents nearby. Kitty Li used her nose to accurately report the results of her smell. Yiqing Luo took a look at the dense forest which seemed to be enveloped by the heat. Seemed like he had to go deeper. Kitty, if you sense any danger, immediately avoid it after you remind me. I have a life-saving trump card, nothing will happen. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and instructed Kitty Li. If she were alone, in this strange country in a dangerous area, even if she couldn't find Ah Feng or discover the true secret of the flame nest, she could also guarantee that she could leave this place unscathed, because she had the teleportation secret technique. However, if she brought Kitty Li along, she wouldn't be able to leave so quickly. As long as Kitty Li could rely on her beastman nature to escape from danger, they would be fine. Kitty Li's eyes widened as she looked at Yiqing Luo for some time, pursing her lips as she gave a low, "Oh." Yiqing Luo couldn't help but rubbed her head again. In her heart, Kitty Li was like a little sister and she couldn't help but want to love and cherish her. Perhaps it was precisely because Kitty Li was a beastman, pure and clear, without the slightest bit of impurities, that attracted her. Treat her sincerely. She would be able to treat him sincerely. Caressing Kitty Li's little head, Yiqing Luo suddenly thought of the little lass Zilan who had been waiting for her to return home. Ever since Zilan's foot was cured, she had not seen Zilan again. I wonder how that girl Zilan is doing now. Suddenly Yiqing Luo felt a sharp pain on her arm. She retracted her contemplative gaze and looked at her arm. Kitty Li bit down on her arm with an angry look on her face. Yiqing Luo laughed involuntarily. What's wrong? Sister was thinking of someone else when she was stroking Kitty's head. Kitty Li is not happy. Kitty Li's eyes widened as she said angrily. Was this a fight for favor? Yiqing Luo laughed loudly as she rubbed her head fiercely. The Beastman race still had their Beastman nature. Chapter 1456. Along the way, based on the duo's agile movements, they didn't leave a single trace in the forest. After walking for about half an hour, Yiqing Luo roughly calculated the distance that she had walked. Chi-Chi cried out beside her ear, Master, Master, Chi felt a strong beckoning. It's just in front, just in front. Its wet fur rubbed against Yiqing Luo's body. Its two furry little claws kept scratching Yiqing Luo's clothes, as though it was urging Yiqing Luo to rush towards that direction. To make Chi develop such a strong feeling, this meant that they had already walked to the deepest part. If they went any further, there might be danger. Yiqing Luo comforted Chi as her eyes swept across the surroundings. Sister, be careful. Suddenly, Kitty Li's panicked cry was heard. Immediately, Kitty Li hugged Yiqing Luo and pounced on her. The two of them rolled one round on the ground. Pong pong, a surge of profound energy that could cover the heavens and cover the earth directly pressed down. The place where Yiqing Luo was standing earlier suddenly revealed a huge deep pit. Yiqing Luo hugged Kitty Li tightly as she retreated a few steps and looked over in alarm. She saw a jade-green figure slowly walked out. Fengling. Yiqing Luo frowned as a bad premonition arose in her heart. Fengling was actually here. Hadn't Zhou Xian forced her to return to the palace? Needless to say, she definitely came with ill intentions. Furthermore, there was a possibility Fengling was here for her. Who is she? Kitty Li frowned as she stared unhappily at the direction of the jade-green figure. Why did she attack us? Yiqing Luo pulled Kitty Li behind her as she frowned and looked coldly at Fengling. Miss Feng is indeed so bored that her balls hurt. You actually followed me to the blazing flame cave. Fengling's lips curled upwards as her beautiful face revealed a faint smile. Because I want to know, what charm does a lady who can make Brother D fall in love with her? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly as she brushed her long hair. It's very obvious, isn't it? Fengling's expression instantly darkened. Her beautiful eyes were dyed with a thin layer of frost. I can't tell which part of you is better than me. Even if I can't win you, the one Xian likes is still me. Yiqing Luo continued with a smile. Bitch. A green wave of chi flew over. Windling's eyes shone with extreme anger. Killing intent immediately appeared, and an extremely powerful profound energy was released from his body. Her sleeves shot out, creating two green waves that surged with intense killing intent. Yiqing Luo pushed Kitty Li away and said in a low voice, "You go away first." After that, he unfolded the feather fan in his hand and flipped his body to greet the jade-colored waves. The feather fan stirred up a whirlwind that collided with the jade wave. Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision saw Kitty Li disappearing into the forest at the side, and she was finally relieved. In the wide sleeves of Fengling's robe, there were two pieces of jade-green silk and two jade-green snakes, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they coiled around Yiqing Luo. Every time he rolled, then he released his powerful profound energy. Yiqing Luo displayed her footwork. The feather fan in her hands kept changing its movements. It completely blocked Fengling's attack. Fengling's expression suddenly darkened. Her gloomy cold gaze stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo as the jealousy in her heart grew thicker. Bitch. I want to see how you are going to escape. Saying that, Fengling's flame was completely unleashed. Chapter 1457. The glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hand quickly flipped over her fingertips. Rustle rustle. The sound of the fan colliding with the satin made an extremely crisp sound. Every time they collided, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel an extremely strong numbness in her hand that was gripping the glower flame fan tightly. This Fengling not only had a way to break all kinds of enchantments, her profound grade was not low either. Yiqing Luo's brows furrowed slightly as she quickly retreated a few steps, accurately avoiding Fengling's satin attack. If she continued to resist, she didn't know if her hand would be crippled. Taking a deep breath, Yiqing Luo nimbly took a few steps away from Fengling. You do have some ability. Fengling's beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent, extremely strong. Yiqing Luo's face bloomed into a smile as she replied with a straight face. That's natural, Xian likes this bit of ability of mine. Fengling gritted her teeth and stared fiercely at the girl who snatched away her beloved man. Snatched away her brother D. And dared to show off in front of her. This bitch, she must kill her. Fengling's exquisite and beautiful face was hideously distorted. In his eyes, a murderous intent that was as cold as ice appeared. Yiqing Luo retreated to the side, her charming eyes vigilantly staring at Fengling's increasingly hideous face. She pressed the direction of her heart. From the profound jade heart, a scorching heat was separated. Narrowing her eyes, she stared at Feng Ling's chest. Gradually, from Feng Ling's chest, an extremely faint light diffused. Flickering, not too obvious. But Yiqing Luo could still barely see it clearly. That was a green-grade profound jade heart. A 4th-grade profound jade heart. In the Nirvana realm, a cultivator who possessed a green-grade profound jade heart was already considered a high-level cultivator. Without a doubt, Feng Ling's profound grade was probably between the earth profound and sky profound. Yiqing Luo's expression became solemn. If it was a head-on confrontation, she might not be Feng Ling's opponent. Since Feng Ling dared to appear here, she must have made sufficient preparations. Humph. Now you know fear? Bitch. Even if you kneel down and beg me, I will definitely not let you go. The satin in Feng Ling's hands flew out in an ostentatious manner, creating 2 jade waves. Majestic and powerful profound energy poured down like a torrential river. The surrounding air seemed to be under the control of the blue waves at this moment. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she leapt forward. The glowing flame fan in his hand didn't forget to shoot out 2 terrifying energy waves. The red devouring flame fan transformed into a bewitching red light. On Yiqing Luo's fingertips, it was like an excited elf. After that, the feathered fan was like a spinning top as it roared ceaselessly in midair, and it swept up a strong gale that collided with the jade wave. In the air, a billowing wave of air suddenly exploded. It was as if it could destroy heaven and earth. In an instant, the trees in the surroundings were smashed into smithereens. Feng Ling's attack did not stop because of this. His figure flashed as he attacked towards Yiqing Luo's face. Yiqing Luo was not to be outdone and retaliated. The battle between the 2 women was on the verge of breaking out. Feng Ling's every move was aimed at Yiqing Luo's vital points. Yiqing Luo's figure was nimble and her footwork was strange. In the shortest time possible, she could see through Feng Ling's moves and break them. After a round of battle, no one had gained the upper hand. Feng Ling's expression turned uglier and uglier. In the imperial palace, she relied on her grandmother to obtain countless miraculous pills and elixirs. Under her grandmother's guidance and the pills' consolidation. Chapter 1458. In Feng Ling's eyes, Yiqing Luo was an earth-profound 4th-grade cultivator, a young lass who only knew how to flaunt her prowess. But, after exchanging so many blows, she couldn't even touch a corner of Yiqing Luo's clothes. How could Feng Ling endure this? To Feng Ling, this was a humiliation. A strong glint of anger shone in Feng Ling's eyes. The profound qi around her swelled up. The surrounding air waves formed a whirlpool. It seemed that if she got close, she would be killed by that whirlpool. The 2 pieces of satin in Feng Ling's sleeves started to attack fiercely. Like 2 poisonous snakes, they kept slithering and sticking out their scarlet tongues at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo was good at observation. The surrounding terrain had been razed to the ground by Feng Ling. She could only rely on her own accurate calculation to break Feng Ling's attack. Starting from the exchange with Feng Ling, Yiqing Luo felt that Feng Ling's attack was strong, but it had a fatal weakness. And this weakness, Feng Ling herself was aware of it. She tried her best to hide her weakness. Feng Ling's attack was ferocious and the lethality was extremely strong. But once she launched an attack, she couldn't defend. In other words, when Feng Ling attacked Yiqing Luo, and when Yiqing Luo took the opportunity to fight face-to-face with Feng Ling couldn't defend herself and was easily attacked. Moreover, Yiqing Luo had completely grasped Feng Ling's attack pattern and rhythm accurately. Wind Chime's attack power and Silk's speed also went through a rough analysis in his mind. And after that, under Feng Ling's ferocious attack, Yiqing Luo was almost unscathed and easily evaded. So in a fight, one had to rely on one's brain. Profound grade couldn't compete. Use your brain. This Feng Ling dared to covet her man. Deserved a beating. Yiqing Luo gave a cold snort as an extremely cold arc appeared between her brows. Miss Feng, no matter how high your profound grade is, no matter how good your starting point is, no matter how close you are to him, Zhou Xian is not a man that you can dream of. He only belongs to me. Her words had just ended and Yiqing Luo's figure turned into a strange shadow. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared in front of Feng Ling. Yiqing Luo's words made Feng Ling's eyes flash fiercely. Yiqing Luo, I think you're tired of living. Waves of jade green qi erupted from Feng Ling's body. They gathered on the satin on her arms like they could topple mountains and overturn seas. Soon after, the surroundings seemed to be engulfed by the billowing blue sea. What's the point of being fast? I will block all your movements. Feng Ling sneered. No matter how fast Yiqing Luo was, she was still not afraid. The sound of the hurricane colliding with the blue waves could be heard in the air. It sounded like the mournful wails of evil spirits. I'll let you know, how fast speed can be fatal. Her clear and sweet laughter was like pearls and jade falling onto a plate. Wind Ling's expression froze. This voice was very close. Right in front of her, behind him. Feng Ling's face was filled with shock. She quickly turned around and wanted to strike with her palm. But Yiqing Luo's speed was faster than her. The feather fan that flickered with a bewitching red light, in Feng Ling's eyes, released a dazzling light. A powerful force distorted the air. It went straight for her chest. Ah! A scream came out from Feng Ling's mouth. After that, his entire body shot out like an arrow that had left the bow. Fresh blood bloomed in the air. Chapter 1459. Feng Ling felt a tightness in her chest. A fishy sweetness surged up her throat. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as he was about to prop himself up, his chest suddenly felt heavy, and his body fell heavily to the ground once more. Yiqing Luo's feet stepped on her heaving chest. Bitch. Feng Ling groaned in pain. Her resentful eyes stared coldly at Yiqing Luo as she gritted her teeth. You dare. Yiqing Luo's feet suddenly exerted force. Feng Ling coughed up a mouthful of blood again. Yiqing Luo avoided her blood, and when she saw that Feng Ling had finished vomiting, she stepped on her chest. Her condescending appearance was like a bloodthirsty demon from hell. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her long and narrow eyes outlined an enchanting arc. Miss Feng, don't think too highly of yourself. In my eyes, you're just an ant. She bent over and exerted more force under her feet. He watched as Wind Chime's face contorted continuously because of the pain. The chill in Yiqing Luo's eyes deepened. Towards this Feng Ling who dared to covet her man, Yiqing Luo didn't have any good impression at all. Especially since Feng Ling had tried every possible way to kill her. The last time at the back mountain of the West Lawn Square, the incident where the devil class was attacked, Feng Ling might also have something to do with it. Thinking of this, a murderous intent flashed past Yiqing Luo's eyes. Feng Ling felt Yiqing Luo's murderous intent, and her face immediately revealed a horrified expression. Yiqing Luo, you can't kill me. I'm from the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace. These two words made Yiqing Luo's senses slightly sober up. The killing intent in his eyes also dissipated. Feng Ling was from the Imperial Palace. She was also the granddaughter of the Imperial Palace's granny. Feng Ling was able to make use of the Imperial Palace's old granny to make Dmo Xian tremble again and again. Although Dmo Xian scoffed at Feng Ling, but at least he did not chase her out of the Imperial Palace. Which meant that Dmo Xian was rather respectful towards that Imperial Palace's old granny. He killed Wind Chimes. This also meant that she had become enemies with the Imperial Palace's granny. This also meant that Xian would go against Grandma because of her. The Imperial Palace would be in chaos because of this. At this critical juncture of dealing with the dark forces, the Imperial Palace must not have anything happen that would affect the Imperial Palace. She couldn't burden Xian. His grip on the glowing flame fan gradually loosened. He gradually moved his foot away from Wind Chime's chest. Just at this moment, Feng Ling suddenly stretched out her hands and hugged the leg that Yiqing Luo was about to move away, and cried out mournfully, "Grandma, save me. Grandma." Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly tightened. An indescribable feeling of unease rose from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly he felt a chill run down his spine. He felt an extremely powerful force coming at him from behind. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as her face revealed a shocked expression, trying to evade it. However, Feng Ling was hugging her feet tightly. That power was majestic and powerful. It was as if it could destroy the heavens and the earth and destroy everything in the world. Yiqing Luo almost couldn't bear it as she suddenly laid down and pressed on top of Feng Ling. Then he exerted a little force with his arm and changed his position with Wind Chimes. She down, Wind Chimes on. There seemed to be a little bit of ambiguous feeling. Feng Ling didn't expect that Yiqing Luo would use such a shameless method to avoid that powerful attack. When their positions changed, Feng Ling's hands couldn't hug Yiqing Luo's legs at all. Feng Ling's body was like a puppet being manipulated by Yiqing Luo, as it was placed horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. Indeed, that overbearing and extremely oppressive air wave. Just as it neared the both of them, a burst of profound qi broke through that airwave and formed a transparent barrier in front of Yiqing Luo and Feng Ling. Chapter 1460. Boom boom boom. Energy and profound qi collided, giving off a deafening explosion. At the same time, Yiqing Luo felt that Feng Ling, whom she used as a shield, was shifted away. Immediately following that, a huge palm pressed downwards. Luckily, Yiqing Luo had already reacted the moment the wind chimes were shifted away. With a somersault, her footwork was displayed. Coincidentally, she avoided that huge palm. But Yiqing Luo was still injured by the huge palm's airwave. The huge palm landed on the ground and the entire blazing flame layer shook. The airwave and the rising heat in the air kept intertwining. The overbearing energy was like a tide. After Yiqing Luo avoided that huge palm, she immediately rubbed her bruised arm and swiftly retreated a few steps. She raised her eyes and looked through the sky full of gravel and sand. The sky was like a whirlpool of air wave. She could clearly see a figure covered in a black cloak suspended in midair not too far away. That figure was extremely short and even its head was completely covered. Yiqing Luo's first thought when she saw that figure was that this style was like a witch in a fairy tale. It was extremely strange, making one feel disgusted. In that figure's arms, was half hugging a petite figure. Blood-stained that jade-green robe. That was Feng Ling, noble and elegant, like a little dragon girl's exquisite looks and temperament, became extremely comical at this moment. Feng Ling groaned in pain and raised her eyes. When she saw the person who saved her, tears started to flow. Grandma, grandma. Grandma. When Yiqing Luo heard this form of address, her heart suddenly stopped. She raised her eyes and stared at that strange cloaked person as her heart felt suffocated. That was Feng Ling's grandma, the Imperial Palace's grandma whom Zhou Xian respected. Looking at that imposing Imperial Palace's grandma, Yiqing Luo's throat turned dry. Recalling the continuous attacks earlier, Yiqing Luo knew that this Imperial Palace's grandma was absolutely a sky mystic overlord or above. Even if she relied on her brain, it would be hard for her to exchange more than 3 moves with Imperial Palace's grandma. Imperial Palace's grandma came to the blazing flame lair, apparently for Feng Ling. And she had just tortured Feng Ling to the brink of death. How could Imperial Palace's grandma let her off? This was bad. Yiqing Luo had not expected that the Imperial Palace's granny would actually take action personally. Grandma. Little Ling is going to die. She's going to be beaten to death. When Feng Ling saw that she had her grandmother as her backing, she immediately felt confident. The Imperial Palace's grandma gently stroked Feng Ling's head, then raised her eyes and looked down at the young girl below. The moment their gazes met, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt that her neck was being strangled by something cold. A suffocating feeling engulfed his entire body. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly, forcing herself not to reveal the slightest bit of stage fright. However, his heart was beating like a drum. This old woman from the Imperial Palace was indeed powerful to the extent that she was no match for her. If she fought with the Imperial Palace's old granny, she would definitely be at a disadvantage. No matter what, he had to think of a way to escape first. Taking a deep breath, Yiqing Luo's gaze roamed around, trying to search for the direction of Kitty Li. The battle with Windchime just now was earth-shattering. The forest that could hide in the area was turned upside down by wind chimes. He didn't know where Kitty Li was hiding. Chapter 1461. Yiqing Luo's face instantly turned pale. She raised her eyes abruptly and looked towards the direction of Imperial Palace's granny. She saw Imperial Palace's granny waving her black cloak and a slender figure was grabbed by the neck by Imperial Palace's granny's arm, hanging in midair. That green and white uniform was already stained with blood. Black tail drooped down weakly. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Kitty. When did Imperial Palace's granny? When did she catch Kitty Li? Yiqing Luo's entire body was trembling slightly as an eerie chill arose in her eyes. What do you want? Imperial Palace's granny's sinister laughter was ear-piercing. She took a look at Kitty Li in her hands and then looked at Feng Ling in her arms. The gaze under the cloak was extremely icy cold. You beat my granddaughter into such a state and you still ask me what I want? Imperial Palace's granny's body slowly landed on the ground. She casually threw Kitty Lee behind her. Yiqing Luo followed closely, trying to catch Kitty Lee. But she saw Kitty Lee's body in midair, seemed to have collided into something as it suddenly froze in midair. Following that, she heard Kitty Lee's miserable shriek. Yiqing Luo couldn't see it with her naked eye, but she could tell from Kitty Lee's struggling look. Imperial Palace's granny used profound qi to create an array to trap Kitty Lee. Now Kitty Lee was trapped in that array and her 4 limbs were all entangled by an invisible profound qi, totally unable to move. Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks. Her vigilant eyes stared fiercely at Imperial Palace's granny. Unable to decode that array, there was a possibility that even she would be sucked into that array forcefully. Little girl, you're so young yet you're so arrogant. Have you ever heard of the saying that there's always someone better out there? The Imperial Palace's granny narrowed her cold eyes and gently placed Feng Ling on the ground. She enunciated each word slowly and unhurriedly. Imperceptibly, she emitted a strong, imposing aura, not angry at all. Imperial Palace's granny fed Feng Ling a medicinal pill and immediately looked towards Yiqing Luo. Under the cloak, Yiqing Luo could only see that pair of venomous eyes. You snatched away my grandson-in-law and injured my obedient granddaughter. Little girl, tell me, how should I punish you? Imperial Palace's granny spoke in contempt, totally disregarding Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she stared vigilantly at the Imperial Palace's old granny. Looking at Feng Ling's smug gaze, her heart became heavier. Kitty Lee was caught. It was impossible for her to abandon Kitty Lee and use teleportation to escape. Grandma. Kill her for me. Kill this vixen who stole Brother D away. Big Brother D clearly only has me in his heart. Sir, it's this vixen that bewitched Big Brother D's mind. Feng Ling held onto her chest as she leaned against a huge rock in a sorry state, gritting her teeth as she stared at Yiqing Luo. The hatred in her voice and the pained frown on her face as she spoke made the chill in the depths of the Imperial Palace's grandma's eyes even more intense. Imperial Palace's grandma gently caressed Feng Ling's head as her voice became warmer. Little Ling, grandma will uphold justice for you. Yiqing Luo sneered. Young Miss Feng really knows how to dream. Fa Xian really likes you, he would have been together with you long ago. Would there still be a need for me to appear? Even a 5-year-old child wouldn't do something like you. Do you think Fa Xian would like a woman like you? Feng Ling was so angry that she started to pant heavily. Suddenly her chest felt stuffy and with a wah, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1462. Imperial Palace's granny was completely infuriated. She didn't put Yiqing Luo in her eyes at all. But this little slut dared to humiliate her granddaughter in front of her. Imperial Palace's granny's eyes sunk as she comforted Feng Ling softly and immediately stood up. What a sharp-tongued slut. Granny wants to see to what extent can you be unyielding. Just as she finished her words, Imperial Palace's granny leaped. The wide black cloak was like a bat spreading its wings. The powerful profound qi set off thousands of huge waves as it brutally crashed towards Yiqing Luo's face. Yiqing Luo suppressed the shock in her heart as her fingers clasped the feather fan tightly as her figure swiftly moved backwards. She knew that Imperial Palace's granny's profound grade wasn't low. But she didn't expect that the power released by Imperial Palace's granny was even more terrifying than before. And it was obvious that Imperial Palace's granny had not used her full strength. This old woman, profound grade was definitely. It was already higher than what she knew. Yiqing Luo's cold eyes narrowed slightly as she released her perception to the maximum, vigilantly paying attention to Imperial Palace's granny's attack. Las Luo, how did you provoke such a powerful opponent? Old Man Tsong's voice suddenly rang in her mind. Yiqing Luo avoided Imperial Palace's granny's attack as she meditated. Old Man Tsong, don't ask the reason first. Can thunderclap arts hit her? I advise you don't use thunderclap arts in front of this old woman. Old Man Tsong stopped her. If she recognizes that you have the thunderclap arts manual, she will definitely know the whereabouts of the Azure Dew bracelet. Your current ability is not enough to protect the Azure Dew bracelet. It's best to keep a low profile. Just as he was speaking, Yiqing Luo's speed slowed down for a moment. The huge rock which was lifted up by the strong wind smashed hard on Yiqing Luo's back. Yiqing Luo groaned and immediately increased her speed to avoid Imperial Palace's granny's relentless attack. Let's hurry and run now. Go back to Ghost Marshal first. If he's there, that old woman won't dare to hurt you. Old man Song said anxiously. No. Kitty is still in her hands. Yiqing Luo took a look at Kitty Li, who was suspended in midair, and her eyes were filled with frost. You'd better think of a reliable way to deal with me. From Old Man Song's tone, it was obvious that he was no stranger to the Imperial Palace's granny. Old Man Song was. It was a 1,000-year-old spirit body, and yet there was someone whom he could recognize. He might have lived for thousands of years. It was no wonder that she had nowhere to hide in front of the Imperial Palace's granny. The reason why he was able to avoid Granny's attack was because the granny of the Imperial Palace was playing a cat-and-mouse game. Yiqing Luo didn't want to admit that she had always played the role of a cat, but today she had become a mouse. However, she was still glad that the Imperial Palace's grandma was in the mood to kill her with one palm strike. Strength. That was the way to survive. In the end, she was still too weak. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly. She must work hard to become stronger. He was strong enough to protect the people around him. She gritted her teeth and whispered in her heart, "Kitty, wait for me." He couldn't go head-on against the Imperial Palace's granny. She must take the opportunity to rescue Kitty Li. Old Man Song didn't reply for a long time. Perhaps he was thinking about how to deal with this crisis. Yiqing Luo didn't have time to wait for Old Man Song's reply. Chapter 1463. Oh no. Yiqing Luo cried out in her heart. Her fingertips fumbled around the profound phoenix ring and took out a ring. She wore the ring on her finger and activated her profound qi to cover her entire body. Bam bam bam. Like 10,000 horses galloping, or like the sound of the raging waves, it shook the earth and the mountains. Everything in the surroundings seemed to be wrapped up by this powerful qi. The ground kept shaking. Profound qi bombarded the surroundings. The surrounding ground, trees, bushes, broken branches, were all uprooted from the ground. This piece of land had been leveled to flat ground. Heh. Little vixen. Imperial Palace's granny hugged Feng Ling tightly in her arms, and when she looked at Feng Ling, the warmth in her eyes became gentler. Little Ling, Granny has already avenged you. After you have recovered, Granny will let Zhou Xian, that fellow, marry you. Feng Ling looked behind Granny at Yiqing Luo, who was shrouded in that whirlpool, who had probably been smashed into pieces, and her face revealed a complacent smile. Thank you, Granny. But the next moment she lowered her head in grievance. But Granny, will Brother D blame me? What if he doesn't want to marry me? Imperial Palace's granny rubbed Feng Ling's head intimately. Don't worry, Zhou Xian, that fellow values filial piety the most. As long as Granny says it, he will not dare to defy Granny's orders. Feng Ling then smiled like a flower. But her smile did not last for long. Because her gaze was staring at the back of Imperial Palace's granny in astonishment and shock. Her pupils gradually widened. Feng Ling wanted to call Granny, but her throat seemed to be choked by something, unable to make any sound. Imperial Palace's granny sensed something, and immediately turned her head to look behind. A sliver of astonishment instantly surfaced in her malicious eyes, only to see that the profound qi whirlpool was gradually dispersed by a bewitching red glow. Gravel flew, air billowed. That bewitching red glow turned into a ball shape and slowly spread out. A slender figure stood in midair. Behind her stood a huge white tiger sacred beast, and on the sacred beast's back laid Kitty Li, who was originally restrained by Imperial Palace's granny with an array. What was going on? A cold glint flashed across Granny's sinister eyes. Her palm strike just now was nearly capable of destroying heaven and earth. Everything around them had been razed to the ground. She actually didn't kill Yiqing Luo and even let her save that little wildcat? The Imperial Palace's granny's face darkened. Yiqing Luo stood in the middle of the bewitching red light ball as her green and white uniform fluttered in the wind. 3,000 strands of black hair flew in the wind. At this moment her beautiful face was even more dazzling. It was as if everything in the world except for her had lost its luster. Slowly the light dissipated. The light merged into Yiqing Luo's fingertip, onto that ordinary-looking ring. Yiqing Luo looked down at the Imperial Palace's old granny and Feng Ling. The cold intent in her eyes was like a sharp blade. Her aura was fully unleashed as she stared unblinkingly at the Imperial Palace's old granny, saying word by word, Zhou Xian will only belong to me, Yiqing Luo, for all eternity. No matter who it is, no one can erase this fact. The azure dew ring's energy blended with Yiqing Luo's profound grade. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel that the profound jade heart in her chest was giving off a resonating feeling. Imperial Palace's old granny's expression was gloomy, only feeling a burning sensation on her face. This little slut, was she publicly slapping her face? Granny. Feng Ling looked at Yiqing Luo in this state, as an inexplicable feeling of fear arose in her heart. Chapter 1464. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways and saw the pale-faced Kitty Li who was lying on Chi-Chi's body, blinking her eyes as she said softly, "Kitty, take a rest, sister will bring you back immediately." Kitty Li opened her mouth and breathed out silently from her pale lips. Apparently her injury was extremely serious. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted as she gently stroked Kitty Li's soft hair. "Don't worry, close your eyes and sleep." Following that she patted Chi-Chi's head. Chi-Chi brought Kitty Li and speedily left Yiqing Luo's back. With Chi-Chi protecting Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo didn't need to worry for the time being. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and looked at the Imperial Palace's old granny whose eyes were filled with murderous intent. She clenched the glower flame fan in her hands tightly. "Lass Luo, you're crazy." Old Man Song's anxious voice rang in her mind. "Do you know what you're doing now? Didn't I tell you before that you can only maintain your Earth Profound 4th grade ability and not use the power of the God Relic?" The last time when Yiqing Luo lost control, if it wasn't for Zhou Xian's presence, she really didn't know who could stop her. Once Yiqing Luo used the power of the God Relic, causing her to lose control again. The consequences were unimaginable. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as her expression congealed. "I can't think of any other way." Earlier, it wasn't that she couldn't escape from the Imperial Palace's old granny's attack. But if she were to escape, Kitty Li, who was trapped in the array, would also be strangled to death by that burst of energy. At the critical moment, Yiqing Luo could only think of using the azure dew ring's power to release the barrier which belonged to the God Relic. The Imperial Palace's old granny had treated herself too well. After that attack, all her thoughts were placed on Feng Ling. Yiqing Luo also took this opportunity to let Chi-Chi transform into her battle form and immediately displayed her teleportation, using the azure dew ring's power to forcefully break the Imperial Palace's old granny's array and save Kitty Li. She knew that after using the azure dew ring's power, that inexplicable profound yin qi might possibly cause her to lose control again. But she had no other way. No matter what, she couldn't just watch Kitty Li get into trouble. She took a deep breath and looked up at the Imperial Palace's grandma. She clenched her fists and said, "Old Man Song, if I really lose control and hurt the people I care about, then use your power to stop me." "Girl Luo." Old Man Song stomped his feet anxiously in the azure dew bracelet. He couldn't be anxious in his heart, and was annoyed at himself for not being able to break through the last stage of cultivation. He just needed to break through the last stage of cultivation. He would be able to use his spiritual body to appear by Yiqing Luo's side to help her. Yiqing Luo ignored Old Man Song's dissuasion. He could not avoid this battle at all. Granny from the Imperial Palace would not give her a chance to escape. "Little vixen." An icy glint flashed across the Imperial Palace's granny's eyes. At this moment, Imperial Palace's granny was filled with murderous intent towards Yiqing Luo. This little vixen had seduced her most promising Zhou Xian. She even hurt her most precious granddaughter. Furthermore, this little vixen didn't look simple at all. If they didn't get rid of it, they would definitely cause chaos in the Imperial Palace in the future. She must kill her. She didn't believe that Zhou Xian, that fellow, would blame her for a shameless little vixen. With this thought in mind, Imperial Palace's granny's eerie eyes were filled with a biting, cold, murderous intent. Immediately following that, Imperial Palace's granny's figure flashed, and like a huge bat, she leapt into the sky. But a moment later she had already arrived in front of Yiqing Luo. The extreme cold, murderous intent made Yiqing Luo's back turn cold. Chapter 1465. Yiqing Luo was on high alert as she immediately opened her glower flame fan and rolled up a hurricane to block in front of her. Following that, her body sunk downwards, and using her footwork, she speedily got out of the attack range of the Imperial Palace's granny. The hurricane shone with a demonic red glow. The surrounding air was also intertwined under the hurricane's rotation. It directly brought up an earth-shattering, billowing airwave. Boom! The hurricane and the Imperial Palace's granny's attack collided. The surrounding airwave was surging. Even though Yiqing Luo got out of the attack range, her arm was still cut by the airwave. Fresh blood instantly gushed out. Yiqing Luo's figure retreated more than 10 meters away. Sister. Kitty Li laid on Chi-Chi's back as she called out to Yiqing Luo weakly. Yiqing Luo stabilized herself as her eyes stared coldly at the Imperial Palace's granny, who was laughing sinisterly with a solemn look on her face. She didn't have any extra time to check on her injury. The Imperial Palace's granny's next attack was directed towards Yiqing Luo. He did not show any mercy at all. The Imperial Palace's granny's attack was swift and violent, bringing up airwaves which seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and earth. Everywhere they passed, the ground split apart and revealed a long chasm. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth as she merged the divine relic with her own energy and used all her skills to avoid the Imperial Palace's granny's attack. And her mind kept analyzing the Imperial Palace's granny's attack to counter it. Only, the difference in profound grade was not just to use the divine relic to turn defeat into victory. Yiqing Luo's evasion and finding a chance to counterattack the Imperial Palace's granny. In the Imperial Palace's granny's eyes, it was simply a struggle before death. A small earth-profound cultivator, even if she could control the divine relic's power. So what? The owner of the divine relic was a waste. How could she hope for the divine relic to turn the waste into a genius? But after a few moves, Yiqing Luo's body was already covered with wounds. Her green and white uniform had long been dyed red. Even her petite figure was on the verge of collapsing. Fresh blood slowly dripped down along her body. Yiqing Luo wiped the blood off her lips as she looked coldly at the Imperial Palace's granny without any intention of giving in. Under the billowing airwaves, if one looked closely, indistinctly in Yiqing Luo's pair of enchanting eyes, a devilish red glow was faintly appearing. Imperial Palace's granny swept a contemptuous glance at Yiqing Luo and turned her head to look at Feng Ling. Xiaoling, are you satisfied? Yiqing Luo, who was drenched in blood, looked as if her injuries were no lighter than Feng Ling's. Windling was overjoyed. However, when Feng Ling saw the face that was still beautiful even though it was stained with blood, a hint of jealousy flashed in her eyes. Granny, destroy that face of hers. Let's see what she uses to seduce the other ghosts in the underworld. Alright. Granny will destroy her face now. Granny of the Imperial Palace agreed to Feng Ling's request lovingly. Following that, he turned around and looked at Yiqing Luo, who was on the verge of collapsing, as though he was an evil spirit seeking for her life. His eyes were filled with sinister viciousness. His cloak and black robe fluttered. A withered, twig-like hand reached out from the cloak. The terrifying fingers flashed, revealing a sharp fingernail on the 5 fingers. It was like a sharp blade shining with a cold light. Swoosh. A piercing sound was heard as Imperial Palace's granny's figure approached Yiqing Luo's direction. And it brought along a surge of overbearing profound qi sweeping over. Yiqing Luo's footwork was immediately displayed. But no matter how she avoided, Imperial Palace's granny's figure was able to follow her like a shadow. Chapter 1466. F***K. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but cursed. That was way too brutal, wasn't it? She actually wanted to ruin her face. She couldn't avoid it, so she could only retaliate. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth tightly, enduring the pain in her arm as she clenched the glower flame fan tightly. A scorching feeling arose from the azure dew ring. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes as she activated her profound Jade Heart's profound qi, merging it with the power of the God Relic. She faced the Imperial Palace's granny as the glower flame fan in her hands spun rapidly on her fingertips. Suddenly, an explosive red light burst out from between his palms. She used one hand to split the Imperial Palace's granny's outstretched hand. The other hand spun the glower flame fan even faster, directly entering the Imperial Palace's granny's chest. Bam bam bam. A deafening sound reverberated as the two forces collided. A terrifying and overbearing aura spread wildly in all directions. The ground was filled with sand and dust. The violent energy once again stirred up everything in the surroundings. The heat wave from the flame nest was like a surging sea of fire howling madly. Crack. The sound of bones breaking was extremely clear at this moment. Bam. Another loud sound was heard. The Imperial Palace's granny retreated a few steps as both her feet were stuck into the ground, stabilizing her body. Her withered, wood-like hand pressed against her heart. Her cold eyes were filled with evil as she looked down at her own chest. Blood seeped out from the gaps of her withered wood fingers. Damn it! That little slut, how dare! The Imperial Palace's granny's venomous and cold voice made one shudder. Whereas on the other side Yiqing Luo gave a muffled moan as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body flew out stiffly. Sister! Kitty Li's hoarse voice cried out Yiqing Luo's name in terror. At the same time a furry body caught her firmly. It was Chi-Chi's smell. Yiqing Luo laid on Chi-Chi's body as she heard Kitty Li's cries. Her breathing was heavy as her consciousness started to drift off. Intense pain spread throughout her internal organs. Especially the pain in her arm, which made it even more unbearable. The moment she blocked the Imperial Palace's granny, the Imperial Palace's granny forcibly broke the bones in her left arm. Big sister! Big sister! Kitty Li's sobbing voice resounded in her ears. Faintly, Yiqing Luo seemed to have heard a familiar voice ringing beside her ears. It seemed to be very close. Qing Luo! Yiqing Luo! Madam Qing Luo! Different voices called out to her one after another. Vaguely, he could hear Kitty Li sobbing and saying something. However, the voice was extremely faint and she could not hear it clearly. The only thing he could be sure of was, someone was calling her. Long Yunzhan? Yan Xiaoyi? Tong Ziqing? Or was it everyone in Devil Class? Those voices were so familiar, but Yiqing Luo didn't have the energy to respond. She could not fall. Kitty Li and Chi-Chi were still by her side. If she fell, the Imperial Palace granny would not let them go. He could not fall. Her brothers were still waiting for her to return. Also, if Zhou Xian knew that she had hurt him so badly, he would definitely feel heartache. He could not admit defeat just like that. He had to stand up. In the bottom of her heart, a conviction kept on surging. Yiqing Luo could feel that her own blood was constantly oozing out. An indescribable feeling near her heart, in the position of that profound jade heart, kept on surging. Her slender fingers trembled slightly. Following that, Chapter 1467. Beastman Clan, Cat Beast Clan Cat King's daughter, Li Mao, swear on the Cat Beast Clan's cat blood to set up a life and death contract with Master Yiqing Luo. I will follow Master Yiqing Luo for eternity. Li Mao's voice rang clearly in her ears. Yiqing Luo frowned. What did this mean? What life and death contract? Before Yiqing Luo had time to think carefully, her lower jaw was lifted and her mouth seemed to be stuffed with some liquid. A fishy sweet taste filled her mouth. Following that, she felt a warm force pressing on her forehead. The next moment, Yiqing Luo felt a white light flashing in her head. Her entire body was covered by a scorching feeling. She could even feel the tiny blood vessels in her body as well as the flow of blood. A mysterious force pervaded her limbs and bones. That seemed like profound qi but also seemed like heaven and earth's spiritual qi. It kept roaming around in her body. But a moment later, the pain in Yiqing Luo's body disappeared. Even the blood which was gushing out from her wounds stopped flowing. Dear Granny. Wind chimes stared in disbelief at the young woman who lay on the white tiger sacred beast's back and shone with a bewitching red light. She stuttered and called out to the granny of the Imperial Palace. That little wild cat is actually the Beastman clan's cat princess. Imperial Palace's granny's cold gaze stared coldly at the two of them who were in the midst of the contract, as a chilly glint appeared in her eyes. What Beastman clan? Granny, is she going to advance again? Feng Ling didn't understand the meaning of Imperial Palace's granny's words. She only knew that she sensed an extremely strong energy from Yiqing Luo. Originally, Yiqing Luo's profound grade to her was not able to pose any threat to her. But now the surge of energy from Yiqing Luo's body made Feng Ling fearful. Imperial Palace's granny squinted her sinister cold eyes, as she felt blood oozing out from her palms, which made her eyes turn even colder. This little slut was really not a simple character. This was the first time she was injured by such a young lass. Even the cat princess, in order to save this little slut, was willing to sign a life and death contract with her. If he didn't get rid of it, there would be future troubles. A murderous aura shot out from the Imperial Palace's granny's eyes. She clenched her fists and was about to rush towards the young girl who was still accepting the contract. Then she heard wind chimes cry out in surprise, "Gran, oh look, what is that?" Granny of the Imperial Palace looked in the direction Fengling was pointing. He saw Yiqing Luo's body, unknowingly enveloped by a layer of extremely gloomy black qi. That black qi was obviously evil qi. Wisps of evil qi kept twining around Yiqing Luo's body, as though it was trying to probe into her body. However, before he could even get close, Yiqing Luo's surrounding rays of red light blocked that black qi, directly separating it. Granny of the Imperial Palace frowned and looked at the black gas with deep meaning in her eyes. After a while, the black gas was completely devoured by the red light. At the same time, the airwaves surrounding Yiqing Luo started to churn rapidly. Bang! An extremely ferocious profound energy instantly dispersed all the whirlpools and hurricanes in the surroundings. Yiqing Luo opened her eyes. A pair of enchanting eyes shot out a piercingly cold glint, turning into a sharp blade as it flew towards the direction of Imperial Palace's granny. Imperial Palace's granny's pupils constricted as she scooped up Fengling and swiftly evaded. Chapter 1468. Yiqing Luo floated in the air. A burst of fierce profound qi lingered around her body. Her green and white uniform had been dyed red. Like a blooming bloodthirsty poppy, enchanting and captivating. Promoted to Earth Profound 5th grade. Promoted to Earth Profound 6th grade. Promoted, Yiqing Luo's surrounding aura rose rapidly. That grandparent and granddaughter duo were stunned. When a cultivator was promoting, they would form a self-protection barrier. No one could break through the barrier and attack the cultivator who was promoting. Even the Imperial Palace's granny was unable to attack Yiqing Luo at this time. Imperial Palace's granny's eyes were filled with evil coldness. Even she couldn't believe her own eyes. After living for so long, she had never seen a person who could promote so quickly. Who exactly was this little bitch? Why did she have such terrifying power? Yiqing Luo could clearly feel that her body was filled with extremely strong profound qi. One grade after another surging violently in her body. Finally, a burst of strong profound qi rushed straight to the profound jade heart. The blood in her body seemed to be boiling. The profound qi gradually stopped. Promotion stopped. Earth Profound 9th grade. And it was the peak of Earth Profound 9th grade. She was just short of an opportunity to promote directly to Sky Profound Realm. She was absolutely a pervert. Imperial Palace's granny could no longer conceal her shock. One must know how difficult it was to promote a grade in the Earth Profound Realm. Even Fengling. She had been using high-grade medicinal pills and various medicinal herbs since young, and now Fengling was only in the Earth Profound 7th grade. If Fengling wanted to promote a grade, she would need to use at least 100,000 gold coins worth of medicinal pills to barely guarantee that Fengling would be promoted within a year. But Yiqing Luo actually promoted 5 grades in a row at this moment. Imperial Palace's granny was extremely vexed at this moment. Why didn't she kill Yiqing Luo directly? Yiqing Luo clenched her fists, feeling the profound qi in her body merging with her body, converging. The strong aura in her body made her feel extremely comfortable. Lass Luo, you've really picked up a treasure. Old Man Song's tense voice came from her mind. He seemed to have been nervous for a long time. At this time his voice was a little hoarse. This old man forgot that you have a beastman kitten by your side. Yiqing Luo turned her head and looked at the unconscious Kitty Li who was lying on top of Chi. What's going on? She couldn't quite remember what had happened just now. Old Man Song let out a long sigh of relief. Li Mao is the princess of the Cat Beast clan. She has the purest blood of the Cat Beast clan. She signed a life and death contract with you, and you received the bloodline inheritance of the Cat Beast clan. Regarding the bloodline inheritance, Yiqing Luo had heard Old Man Song mention it before. Kitty actually signed a life and death contract with him? Once this contract was signed, they would be inseparable for all eternity. Furthermore, Kitty Li was the princess of the Cat Beast clan. This also meant that she would definitely go back and inherit the Cat Beast clan in the future. Was it really okay to form a contract with her like this? I really don't know why you're so lucky. Old Man Song had a helpless tone as he lightly sighed. You were actually able to trigger the fusion of the divine tool and the profound jade heart before you fainted. In addition, Kitty Li took the initiative to swear a blood oath, which allowed you to seize the opportunity to advance. This kind of advancement method required the right conditions and people. Coincidentally, Yiqing Luo had all of them. There was no one else with this kind of luck. Chapter 1469. She was able to advance. It was her brothers who awakened her willpower. It was them who gave her the courage to never admit defeat. So she was able to use her willpower to activate the god relic. Looking at the pale-faced Kitty Li, Yiqing Luo's gaze gradually turned gentle. She moved her lips lightly and said silently, "Kitty, thank you. Little slut. Granny wants to see how powerful you are after inheriting the bloodline inheritance." Imperial Palace's Granny didn't give Yiqing Luo any chance to merge her powers. If this little slut wasn't eliminated soon, she would be a huge threat to her. This kind of pervert was too scary. She wanted to nip Yiqing Luo in the bud. Imperial Palace's Granny's hoarse and sharp voice was extremely ear-piercing. The next moment she had already rolled up a terrifying profound chi and attacked towards Yiqing Luo's face. However, her attack had actually landed on thin air. Following Yiqing Luo's breath, Imperial Palace's Granny turned her head. She saw Yiqing Luo looking at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. That pair of long and narrow eyes were filled with ridicule and coldness. Imperial Palace's Granny's expression suddenly turned cold as her gloomy eyes revealed a strong murderous intent. This little slut dared to belittle her. She had merely advanced to Earth Profound 9th grade. Did she really treat herself as an expert? Imperial Palace's Granny was furious as her figure flashed and immediately attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. This time, Imperial Palace's Granny was watching Yiqing Luo's actions closely. But she saw that blood-red robe was like a jumping flame as it flashed past her eyes. Strong profound chi revolved around her body, as though it was driving the heaven and earth's spiritual chi. Every move was so nimble that no one could catch up to it. This was like... That's right. It was a cat. After inheriting the bloodline inheritance of the cat race, Yiqing Luo herself would also obtain the power of the cat race. Of course, this didn't mean that Yiqing Luo could be like Kitty Li, using her hands as cat claws. But she had the characteristics of a cat. For example, the body's nimbleness and flexibility. For example, the sense of the surrounding environment and the acute sense of smell, etc. As long as it was a cat's characteristic, it had already integrated into Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo's speed was originally extremely fast. Coupled with that set of footwork, it was even harder to fathom. Now that she had inherited the cat beast's bloodline, her speed was almost comparable to lightning. Even the Imperial Palace's old granny couldn't follow her like she used to. The Imperial Palace's granny's eyes were sinister as she suddenly yelled, "Little bitch, if you dare to dodge again, I'll strangle this brat to death right now." Yiqing Luo was stunned as her brows creased. The Imperial Palace's granny extended her withered, wood-like fingers to her side. Suddenly, an extremely strong suction force filled the entire space. In the next instant, a figure sprang up from the rubble and trees. It landed steadily on the arm of the Imperial Palace. The young man was dressed in black and his body was covered in scratches from the rubble and trees. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted abruptly. Wind. It was Ah Feng. Why was he here? And he was captured by the Imperial Palace's granny? Miss Yi. Ah Feng spat out the 3 words with difficulty. His throat was forcefully pinched by the Imperial Palace's granny. His face turned pale and he couldn't make any sound. Chapter 1470. Imperial Palace's granny saw Yiqing Luo's expression and her malicious eyes revealed a delighted smile. This kid is obviously a lackey of the Imperial Palace, but he dares to side with an outsider like you. The Imperial Palace's granny sneered contemptuously. Granny, even if I kill him, it's to rid the Imperial Palace of a disloyal lackey. Looking at the Imperial Palace's granny's tightening fingers, Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth tightly. He's listening to Ah Xian's instructions and listening to my orders. What kind of disloyalty is that? Are you showing off in front of Grandma? That brat Zhou Xian treats you so well that he even sent the Imperial Palace's lackeys to you? Grandma narrowed her eyes. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly and remained silent. The Imperial Palace's grandma looked at the dying Ah Feng with disdain and snorted. You're quite loyal. It's not impossible for you to save this brat. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she looked at her vigilantly. The Imperial Palace's granny sneered and turned to look at Feng Ling. Little Ling, come here. Wind Chimes, who had taken the medicinal pill from the granny in the Imperial Palace and recovered most of her body, got up from the ground and jogged to the granny in the Imperial Palace. Imperial Palace's old granny pushed Feng Ling towards Yiqing Luo. If you don't dodge or evade, don't defend or defend and receive 3 strikes from Xiao Ling, I will make the decision to give this fellow to you. Delight shone in Windling's eyes. Imperial Palace granny. Ah Feng said with difficulty, you killed subordinate. Shut up. She clenched her hand and stopped Ah Feng. You don't have the right to speak here. Sure. Yiqing Luo looked coldly at the Imperial Palace's granny's hand. I can agree to your request, but you must use your reputation as the Imperial Palace's granny to guarantee that you will spare Win's life. The Imperial Palace's granny snorted coldly. Do you have the right to negotiate with me? Then, let's have a life and death struggle. Yiqing Luo's tone was cold and her eyes were filled with killing intent. Granny's face darkened. This little slut has quite a backbone. She snorted coldly. Fine, I'll agree to your request. Then she loosened her grip on Ah Feng's neck. Ah Feng opened his mouth, wanting to dissuade Yiqing Luo, but after a long period of suffocation, he had no energy to speak. Little Ling, go. Granny of the Imperial Palace said faintly. Feng Ling's eyes were filled with joy and excitement as she jealously stared at Yiqing Luo's devastatingly beautiful face, gritting her teeth as she laughed. Yiqing Luo, you have such a day too. Just as she finished her words, Feng Ling's sleeves fluttered and 2 pieces of jade green satin went straight towards Yiqing Luo's chest. Bang! There was a loud noise. Yiqing Luo's body was struck by that satin and flew backwards. There was a sharp pain in her chest. Yiqing Luo stabilized her body, raised her eyes and said calmly, the first move. Wind chimes scowled and her gaze was fierce. Her ethereal face had long since become twisted and savage. All right. Look at the second move. Before she could make a move, Granny of the Imperial Palace stopped Feng Ling. She stared at Yiqing Luo with interest. She had not expected Yiqing Luo to comply with the request and forcefully take on Feng Ling's attack. She took another look at Ah Feng, who was struggling to get up. Little slut, are you sure you want to sacrifice yourself to save his dog life? Granny of the Imperial Palace felt that it was ridiculous. He was just a secret guard. Was it worth Yiqing Luo to use her life to exchange for him? Or was it that Yiqing Luo had the confidence that she could survive within 3 moves from Feng Ling? Even if Yiqing Luo could survive, she would not let Yiqing Luo leave this place alive. But Chapter 1471. Little slut, if it wasn't for him, my precious granddaughter wouldn't be able to come here to block you. Your whereabouts are all betrayed by him. Imperial Palace's granny squinted her malicious eyes as she sneered sinisterly. Yiqing Luo frowned as her gaze swept past Wind, who had fallen beside Imperial Palace's granny's feet. Wind moved his lips but was unable to make a sound. Seeing Yiqing Luo's silence, Imperial Palace's granny's eyes overflowed with ridicule. Before she opened her mouth, she heard Yiqing Luo's cold voice. Imperial Palace's granny, don't you feel that your method of sowing discord is too childish? Imperial Palace's granny's complacent smile froze on her lips as her eyes sunk. As the person in charge of the Imperial Palace, I am very clear about the whereabouts of the Imperial Palace's secret guards. Zhou Xian placed this lad by your side, which means that no matter where you go as the person in charge of the Imperial Palace, he will know your whereabouts clearly. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed as something seemed to have pierced her heart fiercely. Yiqing Luo didn't doubt the authenticity of Imperial Palace's granny's words. Zhou Xian was indeed able to accurately pinpoint the exact location she was at. Previously she thought it was because of the Profound Phoenix Ring and Profound Dragon Ring. Now it seemed that it was because Wind had been following her in the dark. Imperial Palace's granny was trying to provoke her trust towards Wind. And to provoke her trust towards Zhou Xian? Yiqing Luo scoffed. So what? Imperial Palace's granny frowned as she didn't expect Yiqing Luo's heart to be so firm. Imperial Palace's granny, you're indeed old. I'm sick of your tricks 10 years ago. Yiqing Luo gave Imperial Palace's granny a disdainful glance. The reason why I'm here is to bring Wind away. If you want me to take 3 strikes, be quick and don't waste time. Feng Ling's first strike wasn't soft at all. Her chest was still trembling in pain. If she continued to waste time with Imperial Palace's granny, she probably wouldn't be able to take Feng Ling's second strike. Imperial Palace's granny's eyes darkened as she sneered. Granny, I want to see how unyielding you are. She stopped speaking and looked at wind chimes beside her. Young Ling's second move. Feng Ling's face was ferocious, and her eyes were filled with intense hatred. She flipped her hands and the silk cloth billowed in her palms. After that, a strand of powerful profound energy shot out from within his body. Feng Ling's face was filled with viciousness as she sneered and directed all her energy towards Yiqing Luo's direction. The horrifying profound qi was like a monstrous wave that engulfed Yiqing Luo in a split second. Feng Ling's second move was extremely ruthless. Compared to the power of the first move, it was many times stronger. The Imperial Palace's granny looked at her granddaughter's profound rank with satisfaction, as well as that terrifying power, and nodded in satisfaction. Feeling this powerful force, he felt the overwhelming force corroding him. Yiqing Luo wasn't flustered or fearful at all. This was especially so when he saw how the old woman in the Imperial Palace looked at wind chimes with admiration. She narrowed her eyes and a sly and mocking sneer flashed past her long and narrow eyes. The devouring flame fan in his hand quietly opened. Chi, who had received Yiqing Luo's gaze, was ready to strike. Yiqing Luo had never been one to sit still and wait for death. To let her take 3 moves from Feng Ling obediently? Not only would she not take 3 moves from Feng Ling obediently, she also wanted to save Wind Ling unscathed. The first move was aimed at Feng Ling and she wouldn't use her full strength to kill her directly in one move. In order to make the Imperial Palace's granny and Feng Ling let down their guard, Yiqing Luo had forcefully held on and endured that move. Indeed, it was as Yiqing Luo had expected. Chapter 1472. Feng Ling's second attack had already blanketed the area. The terrifying sharp edge was like a sharp blade that could kill everything in the world, making it impossible for anyone to hide. She clenched the glower flame fan tightly as she prepared for the next step of action. Bam, boom boom boom, 2 deafening sounds spread from all directions. The entire raging flame nest shook. The ground, which had already cracked, once again cracked open like a spider web. Soon after, the thin crack in the spider web suddenly exploded. Gravel flew everywhere as a gush of powerful energy made one aghast. But Yiqing Luo had a dazed look on her face. Looking at her surroundings, that terrifying power was constantly lingering around her, but no matter what, it was unable to harm her. She was even more dazed. She had not even had the time to make a move. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo's body felt light as a strong pulling force pulled her backwards. Yiqing Luo had yet to struggle when an elegant sandalwood scent entered her nose. In a split second, it made her restless heart calm down. Her soft back leaned against a burning chest. She felt a warmth which she had never felt before. A strong and powerful arm circled around her waist and hugged her tightly. Yiqing Luo's devastatingly beautiful face revealed a joyful smile. This warmth, this aura, it made one feel at ease. Her lips curled up slightly as she speedily turned around and her hands wrapped around the neck of the person behind her. Ah Xian. It was her Ah Xian. He had come. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a watery luster. She met Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes, which seemed to carry thousands of tender feelings. For pairs of eyes met and everything was silent. Under his gaze, Yiqing Luo had a kind of feeling that there were only the 2 of them in this world. Dmo Xian tightened the young lady's soft body in his arms as he deeply inhaled the fragrance from her body, until he felt her warmth. Dmo Xian's restless heart then calmed down slightly. The young lady in his arms was stained with red blood. He could no longer differentiate if this blood was Feng Ling's or her own. Dmo Xian could clearly feel the viscous liquid in his palms when he hugged the young lady. His pupils constricted and a cold and murderous expression appeared on his peerless face. His thin lips moved slightly. His mellow voice was filled with concern and worry, as well as unconcealable pain and annoyance. Lil Luo air, I'm late, Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo smiled like a flower as she hooked her arms around his neck and tiptoed to kiss his lips forcefully. It's not late, I've been waiting for you. Dmo Xian tightened his arms. However, he was worried that he would touch her wound, so he slowly loosened his grip. I'm sorry. Dmo Xian's warm kisses slowly imprinted on her forehead, glabella eyes. With his guilt, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt a surge of warmth in her heart. Although he kept telling himself in his heart, if Dmo Xian sensed that she was in danger and rushed over, Sandwiched between her and the Imperial Palace granny, he would definitely be in a dilemma. He only wanted to rely on himself to solve the crisis in front of him and bring Kitty Li and Afeng away safely. Don't let Zhou Xian get involved. But in the deepest part of her heart, she still hoped that Zhou Xian would appear. To be able to descend from the sky like a deity at this moment. Only this kind of warm moment would not last for long. After the whirlpool dissipated, Imperial Palace Granny and Feng Ling could clearly see that valiant barrier which had blocked Feng Ling's attack. Chapter 1473. Feng Ling's face turned as pale as paper as though she had suffered a blow as she staggered backwards. Brother D. A broken voice spilled out from her mouth. Feng Ling's eyes gazed at Zhou Xian's direction in a daze as she stretched out her hand. Brother D. Brother D. However, the man behind the barrier didn't even shift his gaze towards Feng Ling. Feng Ling's hand, which was frozen in midair, curled up one by one as it shrank back. Imperial Palace's granny's eyes were gloomy, as her chilly gaze piercingly pierced the two who were hugging each other. But unfortunately, the two of them were in a lovey-dovey mood, as though they couldn't tolerate everything around them. Imperial Palace's granny's heart was filled with anger as she screamed in a sharp voice, "Zhou Xian, come over here." That voice broke through the barrier which Zhou Xian had conjured as it fell into their ears. Zhou Xian frowned slightly as his purple robe fluttered as he kept that barrier. "Zhou Xian, this is your attitude when you see Granny?" Imperial Palace's granny narrowed her sinister eyes as she berated. "Granny, don't blame Brother D." Feng Ling immediately pleaded for Zhou Xian as a pair of watery beautiful eyes gazed at Zhou Xian. Imperial Palace's granny heard her precious granddaughter's voice, as her expression softened. Following that, she suppressed her anger as she stared coldly at Zhou Xian. "On account of Xiaoling's plea for you, Granny will not haggle over your impoliteness. Now let go of that little vixen." "Granny." Zhou Xian's cold voice suppressed Imperial Palace's granny's voice. Yiqing Luo felt Zhou Xian's imposing manner as it continued to rise. The terrifying aura merged with that majestic aura. The surrounding air froze at this instance. This was Yiqing Luo's first time seeing this kind of Zhou Xian. The Zhou Xian in front of her was always a living evildoer appearance. But this time she saw a different Zhou Xian. This was a sign of Zhou Xian's anger. Imperial Palace's granny's expression sunk. "Zhou Xian, are you going against Granny because of that little vixen?" Grandma's face darkened. "Zhou Xian, are you going to go against Grandma for that little vixen?" "She is not a vixen, her name is Yiqing Luo. This lord does not wish to hear any insult to my beloved woman from Grandma's mouth." Zhou Xian's cold voice was sonorous and powerful. He looked coldly at the Imperial Palace's old granny. There was no longer any respect on his face. "Zhou Xian." Imperial Palace's grandma stared at Zhou Xian in disbelief, unable to believe that Zhou Xian would actually say such words. Zhou Xian's eyes were icy cold and his majestic imposing manner was daunting. "Grandma, this lord respects you as an elder, hence there are many things in the Imperial Palace that this lord can turn a blind eye to. On account of Grandma's face, this lord has also tolerated Xiaoling." But Zhou Xian's expression sunk and the icy cold aura around him had already sunk to the bottom. "Grandma, you shouldn't have touched this lord's reverse scale." The Imperial Palace's grandma took a step back in shock under the gaze of those cold peach blossom eyes. In this heaven and earth, the only person this lord wants to protect is Lil Luo, alone. Zhou Xian slowly released Yiqing Luo's waist as his purple sleeves fluttered slightly. Two gusts of hurricanes revolved around him. He took a step forward. The innate arrogance seemed to be above the heaven and earth. It made one subconsciously wanted to kneel down and worship. Chapter 1474. If the heavens hurt her, I will definitely go against the heavens. Following this sonorous and forceful oath, two hurricanes, transformed into enormous waves that shook the heavens, and mixed with vast and boundless profound energy, suddenly exploded outwards. Two hurricanes collided with the profound energy. Immediately, it went straight towards the direction of Imperial Palace's granny. Imperial Palace's granny's eyes were filled with rage and astonishment. "Zhou Xian, you really want to break ties with Granny for a fox? A woman?" Thinking of Zhou Xian's gaze earlier, Imperial Palace's granny swallowed the three words vixen, back into her stomach. Imperial Palace's granny couldn't believe it. An outsider, a woman whom she had only known for a few months. Zhou Xian actually made a move against her. This was the first time in her life that Zhou Xian disrespected her. Granny. Feng Ling couldn't believe her own eyes. Brother D, do you know what you're doing? That's Granny, our beloved Granny. Feng Ling had always relied on Imperial Palace's Granny's position in the Imperial Palace. This was Zhou Xian's respect towards Imperial Palace's Granny. But for Yiqing Luo, Zhou Xian didn't even acknowledge Granny. In his heart, was Yiqing Luo really that important? So important that he could even abandon Granny in the Imperial Palace? Bam bam bam. Rumble, earth-shaking collisions resounded wave after wave. The sound almost spread throughout the entire flame nest. Smoke filled the air and the surroundings were covered by flying sand and stones. But Yiqing Luo still saw it clearly. The direction where Zhou Xian attacked. It had completely turned into nothingness. In the nothingness, in that transparent barrier, two figures were extremely conspicuous. Yiqing Luo was completely shocked by this scene. She was deeply shocked. What kind of power was this? It was close to destroying the heavens and earth. Even though she was protected behind Zhou Xian, she could still clearly feel that powerful and terrifying profound energy. Looking at the flat ground, Imperial Palace's Granny, who had barely formed the barrier, was already in a sorry state. Yiqing Luo had crossed hands with Imperial Palace's Granny. She was very clear on how powerful Imperial Palace's Granny was. Imperial Palace's Granny must be above sky profound, a realm which she had never come into contact with. But under Zhou Xian's light attack, he was in such a sorry state that he didn't even have the room to fight back. Zhou Xian. Just how powerful was he? It was only until now that the two people in the boundary understood that Zhou Xian was serious. Hurt Yiqing Luo. That was touching his reverse scale. For Yiqing Luo, Zhou Xian even dared to defy the heavens. Not to mention it was just them. Zhou Xian's reckless action for Yiqing Luo made Feng Ling's heart ache. The man she loved, in front of her, gave everything to another woman. How cruel was this to her? Tears welled up in Feng Ling's eyes. Brother D, you actually dared to lay a hand on Grandma. Aren't you afraid that this matter will spread to the Imperial Palace? What will the disciples of the Imperial Palace think of you? Big Brother D. For a woman, just for a woman, you disregarded our many years of friendship and Granny's kindness in raising you. Pa. As she laughed, she began to sob uncontrollably. Imperial Palace's Granny gently pulled Feng Ling into her arms as her cold eyes were filled with a chilly intent. If I didn't care about Granny, this strike would not just be a warning. Chapter 1475. Her resolute words were like sharp silver needles. Needles after needles pierced wind chime's heart. Zhou Xian was serious. He really wanted to kill them. That attack earlier was just a warning from Zhou Xian. For Yiqing Luo, Zhou Xian would really disregard everything, right? Wind chime took a few steps back while she looked like she was about to fall. He tripped over a boulder and fell backwards. Imperial Palace's Granny hurriedly supported Feng Ling as her eyes stared coldly at Zhou Xian, speaking in a chilly tone. Xian, Granny is too disappointed in you. She hugged Feng Ling tightly and her breathing quickened. Thick anger was released from her body. Following that, Imperial Palace's Granny's gaze turned towards Yiqing Luo, who was behind Zhou Xian. Those sinister eyes were like those of a venomous snake, causing one's hair to stand on end. What a good little girl. Just by relying on her beauty, she actually managed to make the successor that I have painstakingly cultivated fall head over heels for. Good. Great. When Yiqing Luo heard what the Imperial Palace's old Granny said, the expression on her face didn't change at all. She quietly leaned on Zhou Xian's side, her slender wrist circling around his firm waist. Her heart was filled with sweetness. She remembered that she had asked Zhou Xian before. If Feng Ling really bullied her, what would he do? He said that she was his only reverse scale. Now Zhou Xian had used his own actions to show that his words were not just empty words. Zhou Xian's deep affection. The words of the Imperial Palace's old Granny meant nothing to her. Zhou Xian tightened his grip on the person in his arms. His imposing manner did not diminish as he stared coldly at Imperial Palace's Grandma. Grandma, this lord is too disappointed in you. The Imperial Palace's Granny's eyes darkened as she gritted her teeth. The granny that this lord knows is extremely capable. When this lord is not around, she is able to handle all the affairs in the imperial palace properly. Zhou Xian opened his mouth indifferently, his tone carrying a tinge of coldness. But Yiqing Luo could hear it. Rather than saying it was cold, it would be better to say that Zhou Xian was extremely disappointed with Imperial Palace's granny's behavior today. But, because of a few words from wind chimes, you killed the woman I value. Zhou Xian's tone gradually rose, revealing a trace of anger. You can disregard our friendship of many years for Feng Ling. For Lil Luo, or I can do everything. Every single word spat out from Zhou Xian's thin lips. The Imperial Palace's granny swayed slightly, her fingers clenched into fists. Good. Very good. The extremely hoarse voice was extremely ear-piercing. As soon as the Imperial Palace's grandma's voice fell, a trace of ruthlessness flashed in her sinister eyes. In the next instant she grabbed Feng Ling's body and soared into the sky like a giant bat with its wings spread. Zhou Xian subconsciously hugged Yiqing Luo tightly as he opened up a barrier. However, the Imperial Palace's granny suddenly raised a strange sneer, her black cloak fluttering in the air. Boom! An earth-shattering giant wave surged up ferociously. The direction of the attack wasn't Yiqing Luo. Instead, not far away from Yiqing Luo outside the battlefield. Kitty! Yiqing Luo's vision fell towards that direction. It was Kitty Li who was leaning against a huge rock, half lying down. Just as Yiqing Luo was prepared to receive Feng Ling's second strike, she specially asked Chi-Chi to place Kitty Li at a safe place, before going to save Wind. At this moment, Chi-Chi was guarding beside Wind. There was no time to rush to Kitty Li's side. Chapter 1476. Lil Luo. Zhou Xian's face sunk as he stretched out his hand to grab Yiqing Luo's body. You can't block that move. His long arm pulled Yiqing Luo backwards as he moved towards Kitty Li. But Imperial Palace's granny's attack was extremely swift. Under Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo's pull. By the time Zhou Xian rushed over, that profound qi from Imperial Palace's granny was as heavy as Mount Tai, exploding towards Kitty Li overbearingly. Kitty, Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated. Looking at the dust on the ground, smoke curling up, pervading everything in front of her. Yiqing Luo seemed to have lost all her strength as she fell into Zhou Xian's arms. Kitty! In Yiqing Luo's heart, a raging hatred and anger surged from the bottom of her heart. Gradually it became boiling. Her kitty had just handed over the rest of her life to her kitty. So fast. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly shone with an enchanting red glow. Old. Woman. Man. Yiqing Luo's hoarse voice shouted out these three words sharply. Her entire body tensed up as she leaned against Zhou Xian's arms, trembling slightly. Her tightly curled 5 fingers, each of them turning white. I want you to be buried with Kitty. Yiqing Luo struggled, wanting to rush towards the direction of Imperial Palace's granny. But her waist was held tightly by Zhou Xian. Lil Luo, calm down. Zhou Xian imprisoned Yiqing Luo, looking at the young lady whose eyes were already dyed red, his brows knitted tightly. His hand pressed Yiqing Luo's wrist, checking her pulse. Overlord lad, you've noticed. Suddenly, a voice rang beside Zhou Xian's ear. Zhou Xian was stunned as he reacted. This voice, wasn't it the guardian of Yiqing Luo's Azure Dew bracelet, Old Man Song? Zhou Xian's brows knitted tightly as he meditated in his heart. Lil Luo, or she? Old Man Song sighed deeply. Actually, before Kitty Li and Las Luo signed the life and death contract, I sensed a gust of profound yin qi, attempting to infiltrate Las Luo's body. Zhou Xian's expression turned grave. Coincidentally, the Luo girl activated the power of the divine tool and fused it with the profound heart jade. With the addition of the bloodline inheritance, the Luo girl was able to advance and forcefully block the profound yin qi outside. Old Man Song's voice became heavier and heavier. The scene of Granny attacking Kitty Li in the Imperial Palace gave the mysterious yin energy an opportunity to take advantage of. As soon as Old Man Song's voice fell, Zhou Xian could feel the young lady in his arms. The flame around her suddenly rose sharply in this instance. Her scarlet eyes were suffused with a bewitching red glow, making her look extremely bewitching. Her slender hand whipped up a gust of wind and slammed down on his chest. Little Luo, Zhou Xian clasped her wrist and easily dissolved the profound qi that Yiqing Luo released. Yiqing Luo's expression was tainted with a sliver of madness as her eyes were suffused with a cold glint. I want to kill you. Kill you. She muttered in a low voice that sounded like it came from hell. Little Luo, Zhou Xian's eyes were frozen as his peach blossom eyes narrowed slightly. Seeing that his voice was unable to awaken Yiqing Luo, he clenched his fists tightly and suddenly hugged Yiqing Luo's waist tightly as he clasped her lower jaw and kissed her directly. The warm kiss scorched Yiqing Luo's icy cold lips. His kiss was extremely forceful, rude and overbearing, and there was a slight tingling sensation. Yiqing Luo's nose gave out a soft moan. The red glow in her eyes gradually faded.